It's high noon here on Jones and Keefe. It's a Celtics Wednesday
Terp time
at high noon, which means it's Terp time. What's up, Terp?
What's up, boys?
Does Draymond have a point about the crappy format?
I mean, yes, but like you guys said, that the reason we are at this point is because of players like Draymond. He was a 4-time All-Star. He has problems with this too. Like, there was no competitiveness.
You can say it. Players like Tatum and Brown too. You can
Tatum and Brown
yeah.
as well. Yeah, but they're a little bit on the younger side. Like, this is years of building up. This isn't like a 3-year thing that's like, oh, look, we're having record scoring in the All-Star game. We have to fix it. Like, this has been a problem
and Tatum
for
tried
years.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Now the
scored
problem
51 or
he did
55.
Now problem is 4 guys on a given year try. Like, it used to be maybe 4 guys didn't. Or, like, for sure they wouldn't try super hard in the first half. But you could go back to some of the old All-Star games. Final few minutes, guys are actually playing. There was also more rivalries. But unfortunately, like, that ship has sailed. Where, like, all these guys grew up playing against each other. They all love each other. You see it at every, even regular season game. Like, when it matters, they're all hugging and kissing each other.
And you would think that makes it a little bit more competitive.
Oh, yeah,
but
maybe.
it doesn't.
No.
I also, for this year, like, I didn't have a problem with the actual basketball. When they were playing basketball, the problem is they didn't do a whole lot of that. That was the whole issue.
Yeah, that's an issue.
Like, it was a 3-hour broadcast and it was a 42 minutes of actual basketball. Like,
pretty amazing.
That's crazy.
Well, they needed a 20-minute send-off for TNT. They needed, like, Mr. Beast's challenge, which is fine. Like, he's bringing a lot of eyeballs to it. I get
the
it.
best part of
Kevin
the
Hart
TNT,
did a couple of sets.
Kevin Hart doing, like, open mic night. You're like, what?
The best part of the TNT thing, they are going to ESPN. Like, the show is still a thing. Yeah. Like, I get it, like, honor everyone that was part of it, and they deserve the send-off, but does it have to be in the middle of the so-called championship game of the All-Star game?
It does not need to be there.
And they're going to ESPN. Like, that's the thing. Like, the show is continuing.
Yeah, it is weird. Now, you're a perfect person to ask because you're in your early 20s, and so maybe Jones and I are just getting, like, too old for, like, these All-Star games. Maybe there's, like, a point in time. Because, like, when I was younger, and he's certainly even younger than 20, but, like, loved all the All-Star games. Like, all the All-Star games was a chance to see all the best players play against each other. You knew the game wasn't going to be super serious, but regardless of the sport, you were excited to see the guys. And factor in the whole weekend, like the dunk contest, the three-point contest, the skills, everything in between. Do fans your age into it, or do you guys view it kind of the same way we do now?
No, not really, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Mac McClung, as great as a dunker he is, he's a G Leaguer.
Right.
Like, you want to see superstars participate in it, and that's why I thought it was a good thing that Jalen did it last year.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, you just have really no one notable. There's no headline names that you want to tune in for. Again, Mac McClung is great. He puts on a great performance. But at this point, he's a professional dunker. The guy doesn't play NBA minutes. He's just a G Leaguer, and people want to see the superstars, and that's a problem. And then Giannis tweeting out that he'd consider doing it. He's asked about it the next day, and he's like, no, I was hacked. It's like they're making a joke out of it, too.
Stop. This also goes back to your GOAT, LeBron James, never doing the dunk contest. And then I think the next wave of players were like, well, I'm not going to do it. It's not like Jordan did it. Kobe did it. Vince Carter obviously did it.
Dominique.
Yeah, plenty of guys, plenty of good players did it. A few kind of trickled through, like Donovan Mitchell did it. You know, Blake Griffin was an All-NBA player, and he was doing it. But since then, it's been really few and far between. Like, I really think scrap that at this point. Like, just dump it. Dump it, unless you're going to get stars to do it, because the Mac McClung thing, like, he's good at dunking. Great. There are also guys, you can find them on YouTube, that are insane at dunking. Like, the guys that were on, like, the And One mixtape tour. Unbelievable. You can find, if you just want to watch cool dunks, you can go see it.
Right, but he's a nobody.
Well, that's the thing. It's like a long drive contest. You could probably find a few guys around the world that actually hit the ball further than Bryson DeChambeau and, like, Dustin Johnson. But I'd rather see those two guys have, like, a long drive contest, even if it's 10 yards shorter than some random guy that shows up at driving ranges. And so if you're not going to get the commitment, then scrap it. Like, don't pull a guy that's not even on an NBA team, put an NBA jersey on, and be like, see, this is the team that he belongs to. It's like, you're not fooling anybody.
It doesn't help either that a lot of the conversation surrounding the issues in the game now is about load management. So these guys are already taking time off, and then they can't participate in these events. Like, I'm with you. Like, if it's going to be G Leaguers and it's not going to be the show, just dump it. Like, if the players really want to just take the time off and go on a break, I mean,
so I wouldn't dump it. You got to find a way to get the stars involved. I wouldn't get rid of it. But, like,
how do you do that?
So I already gave you my idea. Write it into their contracts when they come in. You got to give the players something back. Do it for rookies. You can grandfather in all the star players now, but compel them where one time when the league asks, you got to do the dunk contest. Unless you're hurt, you got to do the dunk contest. Like, that's my solution for it. I don't think it's going to happen organically. But I've heard this before, like, scrap the home run derby, scrap the dunk contest. I think those are I think there's something with those. I wouldn't get rid of them, but you have to get stars back in it. How do you fix the game itself? How does it need fixing? How do you fix the All-Star game, Turp?
I mean, I don't see them getting away from this format at least in the next 2 seasons. Like, I think they're going to let this
They're
run.
going to do this again next year?
I think so. Adam Silver loves tournaments. I mean, think about it. In-season tournament.
So I like tournaments, but why is
now
the All-Star game a tournament?
I mean, that's the only way to get them to compete. I thought the competitive level was high. It was still an all-star game. Don't get me wrong.
I'll take your word for it because I was mostly watching SNL. I was flipping in and out. I mean, I wasn't watching with the most critical eye when I was watching in terms of the level of competition, but I'll take your word for it. You're saying it was better?
I'm not going to say they were playing like it was a playoff game, but it was better than years past. There was some level of competition. And I think even with the younger guys, with the rising stars, because the so-called OGs didn't want to get punked by the young guys, like, it makes sense. And I also like... I know you're not a fan of the Rising Stars team, but I do like it because we've talked about it before, just how bad the NBA is at marketing their young players and marketing their young teams. Like, the Thunder didn't play on Christmas. That's ridiculous. So if this is a stage...
So that's funny. I think the NBA is pretty good at marketing their players. Are they
well,
bad at it?
I think they're good
it's
at
all
marketing.
the older guys.
I was going to say they're great at it, but it does seem like it's LeBron and
so they're
it's like the main
right,
guys.
I see. So you're saying specifically they're young guys.
Right.
Got it.
Like
It takes a
year,
while to break through.
Yeah.
Everyone knew that Thunder team was going to be one of the better teams.
Right.
And they didn't play on Christmas. And then they play the Celtics. It's matched up with Week 18 of the NFL season. Like, that is a bad job by the league. So if this is giving those younger players a platform to get some recognition and with these older stars, it makes sense. And it also got players to try. So I thought the game itself, the basketball, when it was being played, was fine. It was all the rest of the gimmicks, like the Mr. B shot, and good for the kid for the 100,000. But, like, we don't need all that.
No, it is. It's true. It's like the setup. Like, if you take somebody, now they've been doing this for like 20 years, so this is maybe not the best example. But if you took like a really like older person and brought them to like a live game now, they'd be like, "What is all this stuff going on? Like, where? Like, how come it's not just the game?" But then like TNT, they did that on steroids. They're like, well, people don't just want to watch basketball. Like, they need a famous YouTuber. They need a stand-up special. They need like a send-off. They need all this stuff in between while also working in a tournament. We had mentioned Bill Simmons' idea of making it have home court advantage on the line in the NBA Finals. Is that an idea you like at all?
I actually like that idea, and I really like the part.
You can't do that with this format.
No, you couldn't do it with this. You'd have to go back to East-West.
Yeah. Change it, yeah.
But I did like, too, that he threw in there that it was only the top 5 seeds, the players of the top 5 seeds can play, because there was 2 games. So there was, like, the one that you're competing for home court advantages, and then there was another one that
so you could still have rising stars, and you could have guys that are outside the top 5.
And the top 5 guys would actually could play for home court advantage.
It would actually kind of work this year because it would have been Tatum and Brown. It would have been
Cavs had 3 All-Stars.
Mitchell, Mobley, and my guy Darius Garland. It'd be Towns and Brunson. It'd be Siakam and Giannis.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Like, it would have
pretty
worked.
good. Like, that's not bad.
Again, I just don't see them dumping this after 1 year.
The Lakers are the 5. Maybe it'd compel LeBron to play in the game.
Yeah,
maybe.
Right. Maybe
with him. You never
think
know.
he plays tonight?
Maybe not. Oh yeah, they have their makeup game tonight.
He plays tonight.
Yes, it would be. It would be a bad look. I have no idea if he's going to or not, but it would definitely be a bad look if he played. You sat out the All-Star game.
Right.
It'd be a bad look if he played.
Yeah, but the All-Star game is Sunday. Today's Wednesday. Like, if he plays now and you're like, oh, I'm prioritizing the regular season.
You can explain it away. Yeah. I just think it's a bad. It's like, are you hurt or
how hurt are you?
Yeah.
Funniest thing, too, is he had his own press conference and just so nonchalantly threw out that he wasn't going to play in the game.
Dude, what a loser. And then he's wearing, like, street clothes. He's wearing street clothes. He's taking a photo with all the All-Stars in, like, just regular clothes.
I'm with Turp. Watch your mouth.
Put the uniform on.
That's our goat.
Respect the goat.
Not my goat.
Watch your mouth.
Never going to be my goat.
Our goat.
No, it's your goat.
Yeah.
Also, the All-Star Weekend was also getting a lot more criticism just because it was on at the same time as the Four Nations, which they're 2 separate things. Like, they're hard to compare. But I got a lot of people wondering about if the NBA could do anything like that, which the answer is no. Like, you don't have 4 countries where it's going to be super competitive like that. Would the league be in on a U.S. versus world, and would that change the level of play at all?
I think that's probably the only way they could do something like that, is doing it that way. And I mean, I don't know if there's any fixing the level of competition. Like, you
may not be able to. I mean, you can't get them to play hard in regular season games.
Okay,
how are you going to get them to play hard in this?
You can't have that without players caring and actually trying, and clearly they don't care.
Right, here's the problem. Maybe the USA players would care because they're pulling on a Team USA jersey. Do you think a guy from
World Jersey,
Serbia pulling on the World Jersey gives 2 craps about it? Like, they don't. So
but it's also versus U.S. It'd be like we're like, hey, we're better than
right. But for what? Like, there's no, at least in the
Give 'em
four
a gold
nations,
medal.
is like the fake pride.
Yeah.
Like, what? There's not even pride in the rest of the world outside of the U.S.
The Olympics isn't bad. Now, it's still a heavy favorite U.S., but like France is like a lot better.
The
and,
difference
like Canada.
is we care about it here in the U.S. because we're not the best country playing the sport, hockey.
Oh, yeah.
That's why we care so much about the internet. It's like
No, basketball.
We're punching up to Canada and maybe even some other nations given the year. But yeah, we're always the favorites in basketball. It's just you're punching down.
So there's nothing we can do.
I don't think there's much you can do from an international standpoint in basketball. I don't think. Not yet. Maybe in 20 years. Not now.
One thing they can do is stop changing it. Like, just pick a format and stay. Like, you've changed it like four times in the last 10 years. Like, relax. Stop changing the game. Just keep it how it is.
I just figured out the Elam rule, and now I got the Elam ending.
That lasted 2 years.
Okay, as a counterpoint, though, hockey kept changing their format over and over and over again, and maybe now they've stumbled onto something good. So there is something to be said for thinking outside the box and continuing to change it until you find something, but I would just go back to East-West, personally. Let's go to some phone calls here. 617-779-7937. Trav is in Lowell on the All-Star game. Go ahead, Trav.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm just wondering, like, what was wrong with the original formats, like the East versus West and the home run derby with the 10 outs? You know what I mean? Like, you get as many home runs as you can, and any ball that's swung at that's not a home run is an out.
So I'll answer that. The problem with the old format is that it turned into an alley-oop contest, and there were guys scoring 60 points in the game and 200 points, and there was no defense. The problem with the home run derby, not to go off on this tangent, but it took too long, so they tried to expedite the thing. I actually want them to go back to the old format, too, for that, but that's
baseball should, but yeah, they ran into an issue where they thought it was going too long.
Yeah.
So they stopped. Last year's NBA All-Star game, the final score, it was East versus West, so 2024 All-Star game, was 211 to 186.
So if I'm not mistaken, that was a record high.
That was.
But
that was sort of like a breaking point. Is like, it was. You're right. It was all just alley-oop dunks or guys taking half-court shots. That's all it was. It was like, and I'm a diehard basketball fan, but if I am having a hard time watching it, you certainly aren't going to convince casuals to watch that game.
And they still did that on Saturday,
a little bit
Sunday, rather. With Curry did it. Like, he took 3 half-court shots. I think it was. And he made one of them, but like. That's going to happen in the All-Star game, but for the most part, there was a lot more competition than what we saw last year. And I mean, obviously not a high mark to hit there.
No. You think Boston will get an All-Star game?
Well, I'd be curious how the ownership sale, affects this, because you have to bid on it, and there's a lot of moving parts with it. And I believe Rich Gotham, the president, was the one running it, but when the new owner comes in, what if they're not on board with it? So I wonder how that.
So why would you not
things.
be? If you're buying the franchise, I would think the league would do like a make good to a new ownership group spending $5.5-6 billion as a make good. We'll throw you an All-Star. Like, I think that would actually help.
I mean, Adam Silver,
the current ownership group can't get one. They've failed. So maybe a new ownership group would be able to.
I mean, it has been too long. What was it, 1964 was the last one, and that's a long time. And
that's wild.
Yeah, and like they have, so it's a matter of if do they have everything that they need to have too. They need like a convention center for a week-long thing. They need a bunch of hotel rooms, which I'm sure they can do it. It's just a matter.
We don't have that here. We have a convention center. We have hotel rooms.
Now you just have to get the city to sign off.
Yeah, they can have the.
But I mean, I'd love to see it come back. Jaylen Brown was lobbying for that over the weekend too.
Yeah, Jaylen took some shots at Warriors fans. You see that?
Yeah.
He's like,
it wouldn't be empty here.
Wouldn't be empty here.
Yeah.
They
Did you
show
see some
up there.
of the pictures though?
Oh yeah, the videos of how empty it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one wants to show up for Team Shaq. I don't like. I'm sorry, but like, no one understood the format. No one wants to show up for that. So I'd go to bat for the NBA all day. But that thing was a spectacular failure.
For 2028, it's down to Atlanta, Boston, Milwaukee, Orlando.
Oh, so they're in the bid,
or at least it says reportedly in
running.
consideration. So I guess you could take that for what it's worth. But I mean, I don't know. I also think it's tough because it's February, and I know they've done plenty of cold weather cities, but for guys to go on a break, wouldn't they be a little bit more enticed to go to Orlando?
Yeah, for sure. I don't get this. Dubs in the Twitch chat. It would be a disaster. Boston doesn't want an All-Star game.
Why?
What would be?
They got the Four Nations here, for God's sake.
Thank you. How many people do you have? More Canadians coming in for the Four Nations.
Yeah.
Than you would basketball
all the
fans, but like how?
All the Finns?
What do you think would happen for an All-Star game weekend? It would not be that. It's not an Olympics. It wouldn't be that much of a mess. It's not that many people coming to your city.
They've hosted like NCAA tournaments and stuff like that.
They hosted the U.S. Open a couple of Brookline, but like you hosted that, like it'd be the same level of thing. It
Lionel
wouldn't be
Messi played at Foxborough.
Saying Boston couldn't handle an Olympics is fine. Like that makes a lot of sense. That would be too much of a crush. I get it. I'd still want it, but I get it. couldn't handle an all. You don't think we can handle an all-star game here?
They absolutely
what are you
could.
nuts?
I feel like we could.
And they just revamped the Garden. Like, that should play into it as well. Like, they absolutely could handle
It's
one.
2 nights or 3 nights, I guess.
Make it 2. That's 3 is too many.
We don't need the celebrity game to have its own night. You can shave that down to 2 nights.
Andrew's in Wareham. Go ahead, Andrew.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Great.
So yeah, I think the All-Star games you need some kind of like pride, like conference pride. I think it's important to play for something to make them competitive. So I think NHL, NBA, MLB, I think that all of these games should be like East versus West to drum up the pride and then make it for home field in the playoffs. Then all the players are actually going to put a little effort into it.
Okay, so like regular season games, that matters? Those are the stakes? He hung up. I actually didn't let him go.
So I don't know. The problem is, like,
no one cares that you're in the Eastern. That's never going to be a thing.
Guys change teams
Proud.
They change teams like they, change undies. So I don't think there's like a lot of Eastern Conference pride when they're bouncing around. They could get traded the week before. Like,
they also just tried that for 20 years or something.
They did try East-West for a while, and when there was less player movement, there might have been something there.
Here's what you got to do.
It's not. It doesn't really exist.
I've solved it. And in fairness, somebody pointed this out to me on Monday. Mego and I were talking a lot about All-Star game formats. We actually had a caller, Bruce, last week, solve the All-Star game problem that we have for all sports. So it's actually already been solved. Bruce solved it. Battle of the Network Stars, 4 athletes from every city versus city
pride.
Battle. It's already been solved.
Done.
But like maybe you go back to like the NHL. Maybe the NBA did this way back in the day too, like the provincial draft, where you can only draft players local.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now it's like you really have some hometown pride for where you're from.
LA, New York would probably do well.
Yeah, I would think those would be good.
They do well.
Now I don't want to get into like a hip hop East-West sort of battle.
Could turn into that, though.
I would shudder to think.
Burn too hot.
I wouldn't want to go there. But you could maybe entice them that way. How about the Celtics for the start of the second half?
Yeah, I think they're going to come home, and they have a chance now when they come back to really figure out their home woes. They're going to play 8 of their first 11 out of the All-Star break at home, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to see if they can do that, because that's probably been their biggest knock throughout the year is how inconsistent they've been at home. So now you've got 8 of your 11. You get a chance to really right the ship there, and I also really do think they're going to turn it up here. They head into the All-Star break winners of 7 of their last 8. They made it a point to hit the break playing some of their best basketball to really ramp it up as they get closer to the end of the season. So I'm expecting them to hit the ground running out of the All-Star break.
Okay. We'll be talking about it with Turp all year long. Celtics Wednesdays at high noon here on Jones and Keefe. Check out his work, WEEI, also on Twitter at Justin M. Turpin.